Hello everyone and welcome back to the HAES book group nominee. Today we are looking at Rethinking Thin, the new science of weight loss and the myths and realities of dieting. And they don't have an introduction specifically, but they do have a prologue, so we're just going to start with that. Three obesity researchers were having breakfast at a medical meeting in Charleston, South Carolina a few years ago when their talk inevitably turned to the Atkins diet. It had reached a new peak of popularity, and they were simply annoyed with the diet and the whole low-carb movement. It just irked them that this seemingly irrational way to lose weight, this seemingly unhealthy, if not dangerous diet scheme, was being hailed as the secret to effortless and permanent weight loss. The whole Atkins movement was built on testimonials, they groused. "We keep saying nobody has any data," said Gary D. Foster, who was the clinical director of the Weight Loss Center at the University of Pennsylvania. Finally, the three decided, why not do a study? They had not applied for funds, but they were curious enough to do some research anyway. "It would be quick and dirty," Foster remarked. Just a brief look at whether the Atkins diet had any value. The three fully expected to discredit it, showing it was no better, maybe even worse than traditional diets for weight loss, and dangerous to boot. They just knew that the diet was going to do something awful to cholesterol levels, and that people who followed it were going to be risking a heart attack. And they slowly realized they also would be asking a question that, amazingly enough, had never been asked in a rigorous way. Is one diet any better than another? You might think that with all the years, all the decades of obesity research, the answer would be obvious. It's a question that, of course, would have been well studied, but you would be wrong. That question, that fundamental question, had just been left dangling. So, before we move on, I just want to address a couple of things. One, I don't like that this one is so narrative. Like, I'm just saying this from a writing perspective, not from my opinion of the book, per se, but I don't like that they are posing this as a narrative. There's no, like, you can't really know what they were thinking unless there was an interview with them, but that's not cited, and perhaps it's cited towards the back of the book. I don't know, but right now, whenever a nonfiction book claims to know the thoughts of people involved, I get highly suspect if there isn't like an immediate citation of an interview that a person had with the person they are claiming to know the thoughts of, because it just is so suspect. And that quick and dirty study means that, and since they go in with full-on expectations rather than just a hypothesis, like this is what they think will happen. I guess, okay, maybe that's going a little too far, but there's something about the phrasing of quick and dirty study that makes me go, well, then what were your standards then? If it was quick and dirty, like, dirty suggests that you didn't do things by the book, and things by the book in terms of studies are typically there for control reasons, and so you won't have misleading results. This is either highly misrepresentational of the conversation that was actually had, which I tend to lean more towards, or the people involved didn't do their due diligence, just from the way the story is presented. Now, I would need to actually take a look at this study in order to, like, say for sure what I think about it, but the way it's being presented here feels dubious at best. And so it began, the first attempt to compare Atkins' diet with something more traditional, the standard low-calorie, low-fat diet beloved by academic weight loss clinics. The study took place at medical centers, the University of Pennsylvania, the University of Colorado, and Washington University in St. Louis, and was directed by the three doctors who conceived it. It was small, involving just 63 obese men and women, people whose average weight was 216 pounds, and it lasted for 1 year. The subjects were randomly assigned to follow the Atkins diet, the researchers handed them a book, Dr. Atkins' New Diet Revolution, or to follow a diet and behavior modification plan written by Kelly Brownell, a Yale psychologist who publishes an earnest textbook-like manual called the Learn Program for Weight Loss Management. We picked Learn because it is the most frequently used manual at weight loss centers, Foster explained. It is the gold standard for weight loss and behavioral weight control. No one could have been more surprised than these researchers when they saw the results. The Atkins diet they discovered seemed better than the usual diet program, at least for the first 6 months. The subjects' weight loss an average of 7% of their body weight was twice as good as with the low-calorie diet. Granted, no one lost much weight, and granted, 40% of each group dropped out. And granted, by the time the year was up, the two groups were about equal in their total weight loss, and almost everyone in either group who lost weight and had regained most of it. This is a lot of granteds. If we read this one, I am looking up this weight loss study. Like, this is one is we're gonna bounce back and forth between this book and like these studies that are being referenced because I want to find this. Thankfully, I'm part of my alumni association, which gives me access to my university's online academic articles. So I have plenty of access, and I could probably find this shit. So, and like, my university has a major medical section, so I have no doubt that I'd be able to find like a full one of these. Like, not, and what I mean by full, I have no doubt that I'll be able to find the full study. The Atkins dieters ended up on average losing 4.4% of their body weight, or about 9.5 pounds, and the low-calorie dieters lost about 2.5%, or about 5.5 pounds. But the difference between the groups was not statistically different. What? It says on average... Okay, wait. The Atkins dieters ended up on average losing 4.4% of their body weight and about 9.5 pounds, and the low-calorie dieters lost 2.5%, or about 5.5 pounds, but the difference between the groups was not statistically different. I think she means statistically significant, because these are definitely, like, percentage, they're statistically different, but they may not meet a threshold of a standard deviation away from the norm, which would make them not statistically significant. Okay, sorry about that. That sentence confused the shit out of me. Alright. Still, the Atkins diet, to the investigators' astonishment, led to higher levels of HDL cholesterol, which is linked to protection against heart disease, and lower levels of triglycerides in the blood, which also indicate a reduced heart disease risk. The conventional diet did just the opposite. That's not what we expected, Foster said. How did it happen? Was it good? Was it bad? Was it indifferent? And most important, what is the best way to lose weight? This last one is a fraught question, of course. I don't think that's the right way to use fraught. It's like you're fraught with something. Like, it's a... Okay, I had to look it up because I'm not familiar with fraught being used in this context. It can mean anxiety-inducing. So, I stand corrected there. It's not the typical way I've ever seen fraught used, but it's not incorrect. This last one is a fraught question, of course. To someone like Gary Foster, tall with a long, gangly body and barely a hint of a paunch, a man who does not worry about his weight, the question is of academic interest. It is a research puzzle, a query that could lead to more grants for his university weight loss center, which paid his salary, and that could lead to publications in leading medical journals, bolstering his professional reputation. But for millions of overweight people who have spent their lives obsessing about food, veering from one diet, one weight loss plan to another, thinking about food and their weight every day for their lives, the question is all too immediate. The three researchers published their results in the May 22, 2003 issue of New England Journal of Medicine, one of the most prestigious medical journals. Their paper was accompanied by an editorial that ended with the usual platitudes. The recipe for effective weight loss is a combination of motivation, physical activity, and caloric restriction, it said. Until further evidence is available regarding the long-term benefits of a low-carbohydrate approach, physicians should continue to recommend a healthy lifestyle that includes regular physical activity and a balanced diet. The editorial, of course, dodged the question, is it possible for most people to permanently lose weight, and if so, how? That's a very poorly worded question. Is it possible for people to permanently lose weight? Because that treats it like it's a one-and-done procedure sort of thing. Like, once you do it, like, it shouldn't come undone, but if for some reason it is, that's not really how permanent weight loss works. It's an ongoing maintenance issue that causes people to bring the weight back on, or sometimes unexpected medical issues, but more often it's a lack of adherence to their previous diet. And if so, how? If a healthy lifestyle were enough, would 2/3 of the nation have a weight problem? Yes, because I guarantee that 2/3 of the nation don't have healthy lifestyles. Just putting it out there. I mean, well, maybe 2/3 might be a little much, but I live in the US, so we fucking drive everywhere. We drive everywhere. And it's sometimes even cheaper to get fast food off the dollar menu than it is to go shopping for groceries. I'm just saying, it's not hard to lead an unhealthy lifestyle in the US. They make it abundantly easy. Would the nation be gripped by what is often called an obesity epidemic, and as evidenced by the grim statistic of growing national girth? The percentage of people who are overweight or obese was a whopping 47% in the period from 1976 to 1980, but now it is an even more whopping 64%. The overweight say it is not that they don't try to be thin, all they do is try, many say, but nothing seems to help. They may never have asked whether there is any scientific evidence that one diet is better than the other, but most have, in a sense, experimented by themselves, trying diet after diet, hoping to find one that will lead them to their dream weight. They long for the weight that would let them buy clothes in a size they think is really them, or that would give them the sort of confidence in their weight loss that would let them enjoy an ice cream cone without the dread that just the taste of a forbidden treat will set off an out-of-control eating binge, or that would allow them to eat Thanksgiving dinner without the dismal conviction that they will pay for every bite with extra pounds. They are like Linda Lee, a New York Times writer who tried the Atkins diet. It worked, but then she backslid. I just had to have a piece of bread, a slice of pizza, a muffin, and the weight came back. Well, no shit. Like, am I the only one that thinks this is fairly common sense? Once you go off the diet and you just go back to your way of eating you had before the diet, you're gonna gain weight. I'm not saying that you should be on the Atkins diet for life. I'm saying you should probably find something that works well enough that you can adhere to it, most of your life, like for the rest of your life. She went on with the punishing Ornish no-fat diet, but after losing weight, she gained it back again. She bought prepared meals that were made according to the Zone diet. She went to Weight Watchers. She even tried self-hypnosis to no avail. The next plan? I'm going back on the Atkins diet. The naughty problem was described in a report on obesity treatments by the National Academy of Sciences. Its committee of medical experts concluded that the battle for weight control is never won, even after you lose weight. An obese individual faces a continuous lifelong struggle with no exception that the struggle required will diminish with time. For most people, even a brief abatement in effort will be met with a significant setback in control. Yet there are those who would manage to rid themselves of extra fat, like Richard Wortman, director of the Clinical Research Center at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Wortman got control of his weight decades ago and has never regained the pounds he lost. He is by no means naturally thin, he says. I am a fat man in a thin man's body. But somehow he beat what groups, like the National Academy, would describe as overwhelming odds. Was it he who beat the odds, or was it his methods? So the three obesity researchers, Gary D. Foster, James O. Hill of the University of Colorado, and Samuel Klein of Washington University, decided to put the Atkins and low-calorie diets to the ultimate scientific test. They would do a larger study this time, enrolling several hundred obese subjects, enough so the conclusions would not have to be hedged. They would not just hand people the diets to try on their own, but would provide them with intensive counseling and support, an expensive and demanding program that is thought to give the best hope for sustained weight loss. The subjects would follow the Atkins diet or a low-calorie one, and the study would last 2 years, long enough to get some idea of how well any weight loss held up. Like the initial pilot study, this would be a randomized clinical trial, and most rigorous of clinical studies in which the subjects would not choose their diet, but would be randomly assigned to them. This is the story of that clinical trial. Some of the people who joined it, why they thought they were fat, whether they lost weight, and whether in the end one diet was any better than the other. But it is also a story of what came before and what is coming next. It is a story of the weight standards set by fashion and medicine, the lessons learned by science, and what all this means for dieters. The saga of people's unending attempts to control their weight is a tale of science and society, of social mores and social sanctions, of politics and power. It raises questions of money and class, and of whether there is such a thing as free will when it comes to eating and body weight. Okay. All right then. If such a thing as free will for eating, yes, there is. I'm not saying that it's not hard, but there is free will. Let's not bring free will into this. It raises questions of how and why the discoveries of science, which have slowly chipped away at the reasons for obesity and the real health effects of being overweight, have been shunted aside by marketing and hucksterism and politics. Oh, wow, okay. And it is a story of the secret world of the overweight who fantasize about finally, at long last, getting thin. What is it like to know the calorie count of every morsel of food you see, and to worry that a single spoonful of ice cream or a cube of Swiss cheese can send your eating spiraling out of control? What is it like to face, as the National Academy of Sciences so bluntly put it, a continuous lifelong struggle with no expectation that the struggle required will diminish with time? And how did our society today end up with what may be the greatest disconnect ever between the body weight ideals that are held up as obtainable if you really try, and the body weight realities for most people? This is a book about what it's like to be fat in this country today. It is about the nature of the current fixation with obesity, where it came from, and why it persists. It is about personal obsession and social obsession with body weight, and it is, in the end, about obesity, a scientific and social phenomenon that defined our time, made some rich and others miserable, led to the elation of discovery and the despair of dashed hopes when easy answers did not arise. It is a story that begins with a research study and one newly hopeful dieter. So this could be really interesting. When was this published is my question. So there's a website to check out. So this was published in 2007. So we have an opportunity. So this was, 15 years ago now. This is an opportunity to compare what she's claiming here with current research. This could be really, really interesting. I don't know how much of a rant book this would be. This isn't like Virtue Tovar that we could just have fun ripping into it. This, I think, would require a little bit more research. But this could definitely be something that we do. So let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I will see you next time.